Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We wish we could be back with you live, but not quite yet. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. Sitting in the supervisor's chair this evening is Myra.
Hi, everyone.
And, excuse me, I know they're making progress on the technical issues because I'm not getting the exact same errors that I was, so that's always a good thing. But hopefully they will have everything squared away soon.
Let's hope so.
I really like doing this live better than I like recording it. Although we're almost live, it's we're going to put this out at 7:30, and it's 6 something now, so almost. I wanted to wait until just before we did this in case something drastic happened. Thankfully, nothing drastic happened, so we're good that way. If you like what you hear, don't be afraid to hit those share buttons. Everybody else might like it too. As I've always said, if you like what you hear, your friends and your family would probably like it, and your enemies probably need it. That's just the way life is. All right. Don't forget the website, the books. If you have not gotten a copy of Inheriting Lies yet, remember that for the month of November, for every copy of Inheriting Lies that is sold, we're going to donate $5 out of every copy sold, and that's going to go to buy Bibles for people that can't afford them or don't have access to one, I should say. Typically, where we're looking, people that don't have one can't afford one. It's just that simple. Also, comments. I've been getting a lot of comments, and I really do appreciate it. I know that a lot of you have questions, and I am trying to get to them. I really am. It's just we've got a lot going on, and I can't get to everyone as quickly as I used to when I didn't have as many. I guess it's a good problem to have, maybe. But just bear with us. We will get to you eventually. Okay, so when I was putting the notes together and trying to figure out how I was going to approach this tonight, the best example was to come up with how the people who were taken out of Israel and put into exile in Babylon, how did they live? Some of them did not just survive. Some of them actually thrived. Why was that? And if you ever wondered what it was like for the people living in exile, those folks that were in Babylon, if you are a believer, if you claim the God of Abraham as your God, maybe you should examine your own life. We read about people in the Bible, people like Daniel and his companions, Hananiah, better known as Shadrach, Mishael, of course, he was Meshach, and Azariah, who was better known as Abednego. You see, changing the names of the Hebrew exiles was one way the Babylonians attempted to dehumanize and separate those exiles from their creator. Listen as Myra reads this portion of Daniel.
Then King Nebuchadnezzar gave an order to Ashpenaz, his chief officer. He told Ashpenaz to bring some of the men from Judah into his house. He wanted them to be from important families, and he wanted those who were from the family of the king of Judah. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted only healthy young Israelite men. These men were not to have anything wrong with their bodies. They were to be handsome and well educated. They were to be able to learn and understand things. He wanted those who were able to serve in his palace. Ashpenaz was to teach them the language and writings of the Babylonians. Daniel chapter 1, verse 3 and 4.
Yeah. As you can tell, not everybody was named Frank and Sam and John. They had interesting names back in the day. Nebuchadnezzar wanted to make an example of these men. He chose members of the tribe of Judah, which was the same as the king, and these men needed to be healthy and young so they could grow into Babylonian citizens so that they could be an example to the other exiles. They were to learn the language of Babylon. They were to serve Nebuchadnezzar. And by their example, that was going to teach the other exiles to do the same. Now, I doubt if anyone hearing this has ever heard this part of this very important lesson. But look at your own life. Have you ever been asked to separate yourself from something that was or felt familiar and secure? Now, I know that not everyone had their idea of a perfect childhood. Not everyone had their idea, their perfect idea of what security and safety is. Daniel and his companions probably didn't have an easy life in Israel. But I'm fairly sure that life was familiar to them. And they felt as secure as they possibly could living in that place in that time. Now, being taken to Babylon was certainly unfamiliar. It was difficult. It was distant. It was painful, both emotionally and physically. These men were turned into eunuchs. So there was no way that they could reproduce offspring that would extend, their portion of the tribe of Judah. The only thing that remained with them was their faith, their trust in the Creator. And even though they couldn't do everything that they were supposed to do, they did everything that they were capable of doing. Listen to how they began. Go ahead and read that next portion.
Daniel decided not to eat the king's food and wine because that would make him unclean. So he asked Ashpenaz for permission not to make himself unclean in this way. God made Ashpenaz want to be kind and merciful to Daniel. But Ashpenaz said to Daniel, I am afraid of my master the king. He ordered me to give you this food and drink. If you don't eat this food, you'll begin to look worse than the other young men your age. The king will see this, and he will cut off my head because of you. Ashpenaz had ordered a guard to watch Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel said to the guard, please give us this test for 10 days. Don't give us anything but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then after 10 days, compare us with the other young men who eat the king's food. See for yourself who looks healthier. Then you judge for yourself how you want to treat us, your servants. Daniel chapter 1, verse 8 through 12.
Isn't it interesting that the very first test of faith that Daniel used is the same test that Eve failed in the garden? Did you ever realize that? Did you ever think about that way? Daniel, he refused to eat what the Creator said not to eat. And that's what Eve should have done. It's an extremely important display of how much we trust the Creator. And that is what we choose to feed our bodies, what we choose to feed our minds, and what we choose to feed our heart. Now, I know this is a contentious point among believers, okay? But the question needs to be asked. Are you ready for this? What are you feeding your mind? What kind of books do you read? What kind of entertainment do you watch? And for the question that causes problems among a lot of Christians, are you eating biblically? Now, there's a bit of a difference between eating biblically and eating kosher. So listen to that question again. Are you eating biblically? Not following the Daniel diet, being a vegetarian or a vegan, however you want to choose to say that, but are you eating biblically? What are you feeding your heart? Are you doing the traditions that the Creator abhors, much like what caused the exile in the first place? Are you doing the things, going through the motions that the Almighty says don't do? I got to plug the book here. Have you accepted the lies of our fathers from Jeremiah 16:19? Have you accepted the lies of our fathers that they inherited? Have you accepted them as truth? And you just blindly accept anything that sounds biblical? What idols do you keep around for good luck? Think about that. Think about these things. Examine your life. What are you doing? Are you thriving or are you merely surviving? You know, maybe, and I know there's some folks out here who listen to me that might do this because there's a lot of sports enthusiasts out there. If you're an avid sports enthusiast, do you have some strange rituals that you think helps your team win? You know, maybe, oh, this is the shirt. I was wearing this shirt and they've won 3 straight games. I'm going to keep wearing this shirt. I'm not going to wash it until the end of the season, and hopefully they'll go into the after season and they'll win the World Cup or whatever sport event it might be. There's people out there that do that. Yeah, I have to laugh because, you know, people do that with shirts. They do it with socks. They do it with hats. They've got to, you know, maybe they eat the same thing before their team plays, hoping that that's going to help their team win some way. Yes, I'm laughing at that because it makes no difference. What causes a team to win or lose is how well they are connected during that game. That's what makes the difference. You know, I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to go on. Think about what can happen when we trust our Creator completely, just like Daniel and his companions did. What can happen when we are joyfully obedient? What can happen when we're willing to dig through the language and the culture and the history to find those lessons in the sacred word of our Creator? We're going to pick up from where the 3 were accused of not bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar's very large idol, okay? And this is an interesting thing. They were accused, and they didn't, you know, everybody else was, but they chose not to bow down to an idol. Listen to what happens to them.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king. They said, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves to you. You can throw us into a blazing furnace. The God we serve is able to save us from the furnace and your power. If he does this, it is good. But even if God does not save us, we want you, our king, to know this. We will not serve your gods. We will not worship the gold statue you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The king told the soldiers to throw them into the blazing furnace. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were tied up and thrown into the blazing furnace. They were still wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes. The king was very angry when he gave the command, and the furnace was made very hot. The fire was so hot, the flames killed the strong soldiers who took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego there. Firmly tied, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was very surprised and jumped to his feet. He asked the men who advised him, Didn't we tie up only 3 men? Didn't we throw them into the fire? They answered, Yes, our king. The king said, Look, I see 4 men. They are walking around in the fire. They are not tied up. They are not burned. The 4th man looks like a son of the gods. Daniel 3:16 through 25.
Okay, there's a lot of lessons here. But let's start with this. If you didn't realize that fiery furnace represents the lake of fire, the second death, here it is. These men were saved from that because they completely trusted their Creator, and their actions displayed their faith. They refused to bow down to any idol. They refused to worship anything that was not God himself, Jehovah himself. They said, no, we're not doing it. You can't make us. We don't care. It's not going to happen. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard that Daniel was spared from the lions, right? Daniel in the lion's den. Even though he opened his window and he prayed to his Creator. He did, why did he open his window? He wanted to make sure that there was nothing that was going to interfere between his voice when he spoke and releasing that spirit, which is moving air or breath. He didn't want anything interfering and getting in the way with his voice reaching the ear of our Almighty Creator. Of course, other people heard it too and told the king. And the king, who really liked Daniel, didn't have a choice but to put him in the lion's den. Now, while a lot of people are willing to accept these as nothing other than, oh, it's just another biblical miracle, there is so much more going on here. Most people don't realize how deep these lessons are when we really dig into them. Because these exiles were so willing to be obedient and do as much as they were possibly able to do, even though they faced death, they chose to trust our Creator completely. I almost said their Creator, didn't I? He's ours too. Now, I said that we should examine our own lives. Many believers around the world feel they feel like we're living in exile. They have no idea why they feel persecuted. They don't know why they feel put upon. And what's worse is they don't know why their prayers never seem to be answered. Maybe if you feel like that, you might want to ask yourself if you're doing all that you are able to do, all that you're capable of, or, are you satisfied with the empty traditions? Do you realize that those worthless traditions drive a wedge between you and your Creator? Yes, it matters what you feed your body and your mind. It matters what day you observe the Sabbath. It matters if you're living the way you are designed by your Creator to live. And it matters if you're choosing to be joyfully obedient or if you're doing nothing more than going through the motions and following the crowd, usually the wrong way. It matters. It really does matter. The thing is, and I've said this before, and I probably don't say it often enough, it doesn't matter how we feel. It doesn't matter what we might think. The only thing that matters is what the Creator has said that He wants us to do. and how he wants us to do it. The choice, is ours. We can do it his way, or we can do it our way. But I can tell you from everything that I can read in the Bible, it will be much better for us if we do it his way. The choice is yours to make. And the choice is yours if you really are willing to ask yourself the tough questions. Think about, let me back up. Remember a time, and I think just about everybody has had this, you had a chance to say something, but you didn't because you thought it might have been easier. Maybe there was a time when you had a choice to make. You could take, a path that would be the Creator's path for you, or you could go your own way. Well, look, maybe it looked like more fun going your own way. How'd that work out for you? But the thing is, now is the time for repentance. Now is the time to choose the Creator's way. Now is the time to listen for His voice and do the things He is asking to do. He's asking you for your heart, not just part of it. He isn't asking to live in it. He's asking you to offer it to Him. To love the Lord your God with all your heart and everything you have. He's asking you to cut off the part of that heart that you used to give to idols or to other gods and give Him what's left so that He can write His words on that. Just because we feel like we might be living in exile doesn't mean that He won't guard us if we trust Him completely. If you're willing to ask the hard questions and then examine the answers. If you think you're surrounded by enemies, you probably are. That's an old military saying. If you think the enemy's all around you, they probably are. The good news is that just like Daniel and his companions, you have the opportunity not to just survive, but to succeed. You have the opportunity to see the miracles. You have the opportunity to see the majesty and the glory of your Creator. And I know this goes out all around the world. There's people listening in, at least 6 continents. And it's amazing that people in the United States, they hear stories about people living in other nations and they think, oh, it's terrible that they're so oppressed. And they don't realize that believers in the United States are oppressed too. The difference is that the believers who are oppressed in the United States have brought it on themselves. They have bowed down to the idol that is their government. They've given up their love for the Creator for the safety that they think if they keep their mouth shut, we'll just get along. Well, I can tell you from the people that I speak with around the world, they're brave enough to speak up, speak out, and lead other people to their Creator. They're brave enough to go out and say, what you're doing is sin, and you have to repent. If you choose not to go to a lake of fire, but if you really, really want a wonderful eternity, one where you're going to be happy and healthy, you've got to change. They're brave enough to do that, and the people in the United States are just being silent. It's one thing to say, oh, well, all we need is God. Well, you need just a little bit more than that. you need to be willing to be obedient, and more importantly, joyfully obedient. You've got to be willing to follow his instructions because this is his universe. And the only ones who will survive are the ones who will follow his rules. It's that simple. Did you have anything you wanted to add to any of that?
Thank you for joining us tonight, and maybe we'll be live on Monday.
I hope so. I know I've got another update to install, so I'll get that done and see what happens. But until then, many, many blessings, everyone.